your seats, please, so we can get started. We appreciate y'all coming out tonight. We knew we'd have a smaller crowd after we've had the big congressional candidate forums and the one for governor last Friday. But I'm going to tell the candidates here that we believe every race is important. We absolutely do. And that's why we're doing this, and we're recording it tonight so that we can provide a link for people who decided they couldn't come out. And we have a couple of board members that are sick, and they will view the tape. I don't guess we call it a tape anymore, but they will view the recording so that they can see how everybody answered their questions. So I'm going to ask County Commissioner Precinct 3, Terry Phillips, to please lead us in prayer, and then our next county judge to be Neil Franklin will lead the pledges. So, Commissioner?
Let's bow our heads. Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for your many blessings, Jesus. Lord, we just thank you for these candidates that have put in to run for these different positions, Lord. We know it's a lot of work, Lord, and we know that you can be blessed or be cursed by some of it. But, Lord, we just pray that each candidate here has a right heart, right mind, Lord, about the duties that they're trying to fill to perform. And I just pray that you just bless each one of them, Lord. Give us wisdom and guidance as to what to do for each candidate and who we need to vote for and what we need to watch out for, Lord. These are bad times and slippery times, and sometimes people can say things that they won't necessarily keep up with. But Lord, we just want you to guide us and direct us and give us the best person for each position, Lord. Lord, we just thank you for your son, Jesus. This is all about you, everything that you've done for us, Lord. We want to make this world a better place, and we ask you to bless them, bless us, in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. The American flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So if the candidates for JP4 would come forward and go ahead and sit on the stage, please. We have Mr. Curtis Wolf, and we have Laney, Pilcher Barnes. Mr. Hester could not be with us tonight. So let's go over the rules for just a moment. Candidates have had these rules and the format so that they could well prepare. Candidates may sit or stand to make opening and closing statements. They may use paper during the debate for note-taking. Candidates may not send or receive text during the forum nor ask for assistance from campaign supporters or staff. And sometimes when I read these things, you all may think, oh, they would never do that. Well, I can tell you that it's been my experience in the last several years that we've been doing this that people try lots of things. Candidates may use charts or graphs or appropriate props during closing statements. Candidates should spend time answering the questions as posed by the moderator and the rest of the board. Attempts to change the subject will produce corrective action by the moderator. Candidates have been welcome to invite family and friends and to bring their campaign materials and signs. The timing. We enforce strict time limits. When the timekeeper holds up the red card, finish your sentence and please stop. You'll have time at the end to readdress any issue of your choice that you believe that you did not have an opportunity to complete your thought. Mr. Fabry, Tom Fabry on our board is the timekeeper. And next to where I'll be sitting is Craig Liccardi, who helps us keep up with the question matrix so that we mix questions up. With only 2 candidates, it's not that difficult. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each question unless the moderator allows extra time. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to rebut or readdress any issue of choice at the conclusion of the questions. Each candidate will have 1 minute for closing comments. The security of debate topics and questions. Grassroots America never reveals questions or topics in advance of any debate or forum. And our endorsements in this race, we look at all the candidates to see who is eligible for endorsement by the board, and we will release a statement at the appropriate time. So I would ask all of you that are here this evening, and we do welcome you, that you would please turn off your phones, and if anybody, I've come to know that you have to say pager too, because some people still have pagers, believe it or not. So if you all would silence those, and if you happen to get a call, please wait until you leave the room to answer the call and start talking. So I'm going to take my seat now, and then we will start the time where the candidates make the opening comments. Excuse me. Okay, so in the drawing of order, we have Mr. Wolf will go first to make his introductory remarks, and then Ms. Pilcher Barnes will go next.
Hello, I am Curtis Wolf, and I'm candidate for Justice of the Peace Precinct 4. I want to thank everybody for being out here tonight, and I'm excited to be out here as well. I want to earn your support to be the next Justice of the Peace Precinct 4. I think we have some great people in this race with really, very good intentions. However, I think at the end of the night you will see there's a vast difference in the type and amount of experience that we each have. I've been married to my wife Cheryl for 15 years. Together we have 3 children, ages 8 to 14. All 3 of our children attend Grace Community School, and we live in the Chapel Hill community, a community that we chose to raise our children in and open a business in. I started law enforcement about 20 years ago, worked as a patrol officer, and then a patrol sergeant, and a felony investigator. And in that time, I worked numerous different types of investigations. I've been on numerous death investigations. I'm sorry, was that only 1 minute for the opening? I thought it was 2 minutes. Sorry. Sorry. It was 10. Okay. So I've been on numerous different types of death investigations, including homicides, suicide, and accidental and natural deaths. For the past couple of years, I've had the opportunity to work alongside my wife at her law firm, where we handle both civil and criminal cases. The work that I have done for the past 2 decades has given me the experience and knowledge for this exact position. Again, I appreciate everybody being out here tonight, and I look forward to earning your support.
Hi everyone, my name is Laney Pilcher Barnes. I was born and raised in Precinct 4. I'm a paralegal in Tyler, and I've been an active member in the Winona Volunteer Fire Department for the past 6 years. And with that time, I've been able to shadow Judge Mitch Schamberger on numerous calls where I've been able to, perform inquests with him. And so I think that is going to help me be JP, and also the fact that I've been able to shadow him in court proceedings, and also the court proceedings I've been in with my job as a paralegal in Tyler. I'm also EMR certified, and so I think that will help me with the inquest as well. I've also been able to work as a paralegal with the criminal justice, criminal side of law, and so I know about the bonds and all that goes on with the criminals. And so the fact that the Justice of the Peace has to do magistration and inquest, I think I'm more qualified for that.
Thank you so much. And so we will start in the reverse order for questions. I will ask the first question, and then we will then next Tony, and we'll proceed down the table. And so in this first question, though, moderator's going to give you 2 minutes each to answer the question. It can be a complicated topic. This has to do with, I'm going to have a series of questions that have to do with evictions. Justice courts have original jurisdiction of cases of forcible entry and detainer for eviction suits. As a justice, you may preside over these types of cases. Eviction suits include forcible entry and detainer suits. How familiar are you with these laws? That's the first part of the question. And second of all, how will you ensure that you will continue to remain competent in this area of law? Ms. Pilcher Barnes.
So one of the main duties of the Justice of the Peace, other than magistration and inquests, are the evictions and stuff like that regarding Justice of the Peace. I am also a daughter of Ronnie Pilcher, who does real estate, and so I kind of have that side of the but also the fact of, as a judge, I will be able to preside over those kind of cases. And so I'm aware of the law, and I'm aware of how to preside over those kinds of cases. But really, I'm gonna, sorry.
It's okay.
I'm going to figure out what the facts are of the case, and then I will preside in that manner.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wolf.
So I believe that evictions and forcible detainer is one of the subjects that Justice of the Peace do that I actually have the least amount of experience in as far as evictions, right? I've done a lot of work on the civil side and a lot of work on the criminal side. Now, as a law enforcement officer, we go out there and we help serve the papers, and we help do the forcible detainer whenever that takes place. The Justice of the Peace Court judge, for their first year, they have to do 80 hours of continuing education and then additional 20 hours after that. So what I would do is, in the areas that I am lacking, I would make sure that pick up the phone and call another Justice of the Peace, or add additional continuing education for that subject.
Thank you. Ms. Fabry. Okay. Do you have any?
Sure. We have an extra mic right here.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know she was saying that.
Okay. Laney, people certainly applaud retiring Judge Schamberger for his 39 years of service. And you mentioned you've shadowed after him for a good amount of time. Have you made any observations of things that need to be changed, or anything that you would do differently should you become elected?
That's a good question. Judge Schamberger does have a good standing as judge. He's done it for the past 40 years. This is his 40th year. And he's got a lot of people that really applaud him for all that he's done for our community. And I've been able to shadow him, like I've been saying. And he's given me a good insight to what this job actually does, and does for the community itself. So as for what I would change, nothing necessarily for him. I think he does a very great job in what he does. The only thing I would change is probably how the court clerks work. Okay, sometimes it's kind of hard to catch them on the phone. So I think a good idea would be for me to get in there and make sure that someone's answering the phones every time it rings, or at least answers the voicemails every day. And also, sometimes it's hard to get in touch with them between lunch hours. Sometimes they go out to lunch, and then people in the community can only get there during 12 to 1. So I would like to implement a good policy where they have to stay, or at least alternate lunch hours, so that way to ensure someone will be there.
Thank you.
do you have a question for Mr. Wolf? No, I'm asking you.
Well, I guess I would ask the same question. Have you looked in, I'm sure you know, the judge's
Yes, ma'am.
period of time in office and how he has carried out duties. Have you been close enough to make observations of any?
Well, I can tell you that one change that I would do, and the justice of the peace, they are not required to perform marriages. And case law is real clear on this. If you perform a marriage for one person, you perform a marriage for everybody, regardless if that's same sex or not. So I would not be performing marriages because I do not believe in same-sex marriage. So that is one thing that I will do differently than Judge Schamberger. That's something that's really important to me.
Thank you.
No.
Welcome to both of you. Each of you has explained, and I'm sure the other candidate as well, has a certain breadth of experience, certain skill sets that you bring to the table. And I think we start with you, so we'll start with Curtis Wolf. How would you describe your skill sets and your breadth of experience as superior that would qualify you to be the best candidate for this position?
Right, so I think the duties of a JP is, there's such a wide variety of duties. One minute they could be hearing a civil case, and the next minute they could be attending a death investigation, doing an inquest. And the work that I've done in law enforcement, the work that I've done at the law firm, has really given me the opportunity to learn all of those aspects of the JP courts, from inquests to criminal law to civil law, and the amount of time that I've been doing it for. And then not only that, the relationships that I've built with other county officials, other judges. If I have a question, it's easy enough to pick up the phone and ask them, and they can help guide me in the right way.
Okay.
Thank you. So like I kind of said a little bit earlier, I got a little nervous, so you probably didn't understand. I've been a paralegal in Tyler. We do criminal, family law, and some civil law. I'm not in law enforcement, so I don't have that kind of experience. But I do have the experience of a paralegal. I've been in many courtrooms throughout Smith County and contiguous counties doing numerous types of law. I've also been a volunteer firefighter, okay? And that does not just do fire. We do medical calls. We go on wrecks. Also, we put out fires. But I've got the experience to know, the right experience to know how to perform magistration and inquest, because more than likely that is most likely what the Justice of the Peace is going to do on a daily basis.
Mr. Fabry.
So this question is for Ms. Pilcher. The annual budget for fiscal year 22 for the Justice JP4 is $362,000, and it was increased by 5% over the 2021 budget. In your opinion, is that the right amount of money? And the second follow-up is, without regard to whether you think it's the right amount of money, what plans or ideas might you have to reduce that to save taxpayers? Thank you.
Well, as a taxpayer, I'm always going to look for ways to kind of reduce the impact it has on taxpayers. Without knowing exactly what this money is being used for, I don't think I can accurately give you a yes or no if it's the correct amount of money. But however, I will analyze specifically what the money is used for and how I can lessen that impact on the taxpayers.
Thank you. Same question?
And I agree with Ms. Pilcher that it's hard to say if that's enough money or right amount of money or too much money. But what I can say is there is a couple ways that a JP can save the taxpayers of the whole county some money. And working at the law office, I've noticed bonds, okay? There are certain bonds that are set either extremely high or extremely low. And working at the law office, we see first-time offenders of nonviolent cases may get an extremely high bond, or a repeat offender that's a violent offender may get a lower bond. So what that does is that takes up the time of the district court and the county court, where they're going to have to hear bond hearings on either reducing that bond or increasing that bond. So I think it's important to ask the right questions at the beginning and have the right bond set at the beginning.
Well, thank you both for showing up. 2 of 3, it's good. It's better than none. I want to ask you both the question. What would be your, Judge Schamberger's been in that position many, many years. Coming in, what would be your first 3 goals to accomplish that may differ from what Judge Schamberger has proposed over the years? Yes, that'd be fine.
Well, considering that Judge Mitch Schamberger has been in for this long, I think going in, the first thing I would do is implement an open door policy for all citizens of Precinct 4. I want to be sure that I am available 24/7 to anybody who may need me or have any questions or comments. And also I want my office to be open for telephone calls all day from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. I want to make sure that we are 100% transparent. And so those are 2 things I would change or I would implement. And also the third thing, I just want to make sure that I'm visible to the whole county, even after this election. I want to be going to events and getting the name out there, and I just want to be visible with my county.
Mr. Wolf?
You know, and I agree, elected officials should be visible out in public. What I would kind of disagree with is, as far as the phone calls and having, you can have, as a judge, is you got to be real careful about just passing your phone number out and having people call with questions or anything about their case, because you're going to run into an ethical issue about ex parte communication. So you got to be real careful about that. But you do need to make yourself available 24/7 for law enforcement, as far as signing warrants or anything like that.
Okay, Mr. Wolf, you brought up the question of the issue of being responsible for setting bonds. So let's explore that a little more. What criteria, and be specific, what criteria will you use to determine an appropriate bond?
So there's 3 main questions that you should ask yourself, and that's, the first is the person a flight risk? Are they a danger to the community, and will they return to court? Obviously, with the Damon Allen Act, now you are required to review a subject's criminal background history. So you need to make sure that, so you should not, basically, you should not take a cookie cutter approach to bonds. You need to look at the totality of the circumstances. You need to look at the nature of the crime, the criminal history, and if that subject poses a danger or not, and if they are a flight risk, and if they will return to court. And those are the main criteria for looking at it on setting the appropriate bond.
Okay. Ms. Pilcher Barnes?
I think some criteria that I would look at, just like Mr. Curtis said, I would look at the criminal history of the defendant. I will look at if he is a flight risk, but I would also really take into effect the amount of bond that I set. If he or she's not a flight risk, then I may necessarily not want to do such a high bond, okay? Because that causes the overcrowdedness in the jails. And that's also causing your taxpayer money to go up, okay? And so I would make sure I look at that, but also I want to make sure that I give out more personal recognizance bonds if that's more deemed necessarily than a higher bond. So I think some of that criteria is what I would look at.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Fabry?
Okay, AJP oversees traffic citations, as we all know. As a fairly new resident to the Tyler area, one thing I've observed is there seems to be a lot of red light issues. Like coming home last night, we actually did see one of those. What is your opinion of this, and how would you adjudicate these types of violations?
Well, I think all traffic violations can be hazardous. I think that they could always lead to something that no one wants to happen on their day, coming home from work or whatever. And so I think I would handle all traffic violations regardless of, minimal efficiency, or I would handle them all most likely the same, just because it may have not happened in that specific incident, but they could always lead to something more hazardous for other citizens.
Mr. Wolf?
Same question. So I agree, obviously, enforcing traffic laws is really important, because obviously we don't want to have unnecessary wrecks or anything like that. But again, I don't want to take a cookie cutter approach to anything that I do as JP, as far as enforcing everything the same on down the line. I think you have to look at everything and see what the reason was. If there was a reason, there are some of these red lights that are actually kind of hard to see, but, we need to be aware of those situations and then take action from there. Like I said, I just wouldn't necessarily assess a fine for the same amount for the same thing over and over and over.
Mentioned that it's a 24/7 position, and so since you are on call 24/7, 365, holidays, weekends, nights, everything, are there any factors in your personal lives that would preclude you from being available 24/7, 365? Mr. Wolf.
There's not. So as an investigator, I don't ever remember getting called out at 6 o'clock in the evening. I think we always got called out at 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning. My wife is aware of that, and obviously we have 3 children, but, she has a job where she's at home every night, where she doesn't have to worry about that. So I'm prepared, and I know the sacrifices that it's going to take, and I'm willing to do that.
Well, being a volunteer firefighter, you never know when that pager's going to ring for you to get called out. So I don't think I'll have any problem getting up at 1 in the morning, 3 in the morning, or 6 in the morning for that matter. I'm a paralegal in Tyler, like I said, and they're very flexible with my fire schedule, because I could be out on a structure fire from 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. and miss getting up early to go to work. And so they're flexible on that situation. So as far as the work side of my personal life, I think I'll be just fine on that. But I'm also a newlywed, but good thing is he's a volunteer firefighter as well. So if I'm up at 3 in the morning, he'll be up at 3 in the morning as well. So we've kind of already talked about that. I may not be able to get to go on all the fire calls with him, because I want to still be available for my citizens of Precinct 4, just in case a tragedy does occur in the middle of the night. So we've established that communication. I think I'll be ready.
Thank you. And we'll start with you, Ms. Pilcher Barnes. How will you ensure objectivity in cases, particularly those where one party is represented by legal counsel and the other is not?
Well, you definitely have a right to legal counsel, so I would double check that they are aware of their rights and that they will need to waive their counsel as well, just so there's no legal action occurring to my misduty. But I do want to double check that they are aware that they do have a right for counsel, and if they do want to waive that right, then we'll continue on with the proceeding as noted.
Mr. Wolf.
Do you mind repeating the question?
How will you ensure objectivity in cases, particularly those where one party is represented by legal counsel and the other is not?
Right. So there's rules that are set out that each party must adhere to, even if you're representing yourself. But I can tell you that dealing with an attorney or dealing with a pro se person is totally different. And you would think that it might be easier dealing with an attorney, but sometimes it's not. But I can tell you, being married to an attorney for 15 years, that has given me some experience on that. And at the law office, we deal with a lot of attorneys, but there are certain rules that do have to be followed, that both sides will have to follow.
Okay.
Question for, start with Mr. Wolf. So search warrants are
in the news a lot for the way they are conducted and sometimes the excessive force that is used. What are your criteria when a officer of the law comes forward requesting a search warrant? What are your criteria for approving, or what, maybe another way to say it, what is your criteria for disapproving a search warrant request?
So, I mean, to me, that's simple. To me, it's just the officer has to have probable cause. Myself writing plenty of warrants myself, I mean, the criteria is plain. I mean, if there's probable cause that exists, you know, you as a judge takes that officer for their word and reviews affidavits, and you either sign it or you don't sign it based on if there's probable cause.
I think my answer is similar to Mr. Wolf's. There does have to be probable cause for a search warrant to be issued. So I think what I would do as my criteria, I would double check and I would look through the affidavit and I will kind of understand the facts of what's going on before I issue that warrant and before I sign that dotted line. But I do want to make sure that I have a good relationship with the constable's office and I know that they're trustworthy, and so I know that I will be able to understand that it is probable cause, and so it'll be easier for me to sign that line.
Mr. Wolf, this question's for you. I'm just curious, if your wife is an attorney and you're the justice of the peace, do you see any opportunity for conflict there? And if so, how would you handle that?
I don't see any conflict at all. The majority of her cases, she's a contract defense attorney for the 114th District Court. So she has a lot of criminal cases in Judge Jackson's court, and then the other civil cases are mostly all in district court, so there's really not a conflict there.
I assume you have no conflicts?
No conflict.
Okay, let's talk about the issue of damages first. So, Mr. Wolf, we'll start with you. A landlord may file a claim for breach of contract in justice court so long as the judgment amount sought is within the jurisdictional limit of the justice court. The following question relates to an award for damages. In addition to unpaid rent, written leases may further allow a landlord to recover additional sums such as fees reasonably necessary to relet the property, fees for repairs beyond normal wear and tear, and costs associated with legal proceedings brought under the lease. When a written lease exists between a landlord and a tenant that provides for the landlord's recovery of additional sums, how will you ensure that the prevailing party is awarded the full amount of damages the party is legally entitled to?
So, obviously, ruling in an impartial manner and listening to all the facts and reviewing the amount of damages that are, obviously, JP Court can hear up to $20,000. Most landlord-tenant cases are going to be well within that. You know, make sure that you have the written lease that is in standards with the, sorry, I lost my train of thought. But there are certain damages that you can award as a justice of the peace and certain damages that are that you can do for interest. You just need to make sure that the calculations are all correct and that the judgment is correct on the amount. Yeah, I think.
Okay.
Well, I think one thing I'll need to do is I'll need to review the lease page by page, line by line. I want to look and see what that tenant signed when they did the lease agreement, and I want to, you know, understand that the tenant did understand what they were signing at the time of signage, and so I would obviously award for the, you know, unpaid rent, but I would kind of be a little stricter on the excess money. I want to double check that there was good standing for the breach of lease, and I want to double check that everything is crossed, all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted before I kind of give all that extra money.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Wolf, a little bit about your campaign. How is it going? Are you door knocking? have you? How
Right.
many doors have you knocked?
Oh, a lot. We've been out door knocking for a few weeks now, putting up signs. Last week I was out with COVID, so last week I had to take a little bit of a break, but we are back at it hard campaigning.
Thank you. And the same question would go for you.
So I'm not a politician by any means, so this candidacy is a little new to me, okay? But I am a people person. I love talking to people, and I love laughing and catching on with people. So it has been a lot easier for me to campaign, but every Saturday, 9 to 5, me and my family, we're out door knocking. Every single house that we come to, I'm talking to people, and I'm asking them what kind of changes would they like to be seen, okay? And I want to make sure that their voice is heard individually, okay? And I'm also door knocking. We've been all through Chapel Hill. We've done Starville. We've done some of Red Springs. We've done Winona. I'm getting out there every Saturday and every day that I can get off work because I do work full time. So it's kind of hard for me to juggle everything, but I'm door knocking as much as I can.
Well, for both of you, did you have a goal of how many doors you wanted to hit?
Well, I went to the elections office and I got a list of everybody that voted in the 2020 primary, and I'm going to all of those houses. There was about 4,000 pages that I've had to condense into the people that are voting and have voted most recently. If you just look at the people of the registered voters, sometimes they don't vote at every election. So I'm going to the people's houses that are continuously voting and that do care about this community in order to change it if necessary.
And I think she's on the right track, absolutely. We try to reach all the voters that vote routinely. You know, and I'm pretty sure that Laney may agree with me, that we live in an area, Precinct 4, which is spread out. It's got fences. It's got no trespassing signs posted. You know, there's not many neighborhoods like the Woods that you can go knocking on in our precinct. So we try to find any ways that we can, or I can, to knock on doors, make phone calls, to get in touch with people that way. It's just, you can do all the door knocking you want, but, you know, it may take a whole day to do 7 houses.
All right, I guess we'll start with Mr. Wolf on this one. There's a lot of folks that are opting to homeschool their children, and even for those who don't homeschool, you know, kids are in school, and sometimes kids make some choices that they shouldn't make. How would you handle truancy cases as a justice of the peace?
All right, so truancy cases, when I was a law enforcement officer, I seen that the children that were in the truancy matters, oftentimes as adults, would end up in the criminal jurisdiction or criminal courts when they're adults. I would do what I can, use the resources I can, make sure that I know what's going on with each case, and never use a cookie cutter approach. Find out why they're not going to school, and if there's a way that we can help them to get to school, then we can help them in that way. But you know, being a father of 3 children, I understand that school is very important. Me and my wife, we homeschooled our children for a few years before we put them into Grace Community School. And I understand that as a Texan, you have the right to homeschool your kids, put them in private school or public school, whatever the choice you want to make. But we need to make sure that they're getting some type of education.
Well, my mom has been a teacher for the past 30 years, so school was very important in my family for my brother and I. If we just had a cold or a cough, we weren't staying home in the bed. She was dragging us and giving us a peppermint for our cough. So I think that school is very important. It's taught me a lot of things in life. So I think as far as truancy cases, I would double check that there is not a significant reason why they weren't attending school. If there was a death in the family or something along that nature, I may be a little lenient, but if it's just I want to stay home from school, then I will find a way to talk with the parents and talk with the caregivers, and I'll get them into school because it is very beneficial.
You see a lot of numbers in the news these days about COVID and people who have died, and you do death certificates. There's a big controversy going on right now about classifications. People who have died with COVID versus people who have died because of COVID. What is your opinion on those classifications, and how aggressively would you moderate those? Yes, first question to Ms. Richard Barnes.
Well, I think for a lot of the cases, the justice of the peace doesn't show up until after the fact. So I think I would double check all of the vitals and the signs that caused the death, and I would double check that everything is correct and sounds good before I sign that death certificate.
So as a justice of the peace, when they fill out a death certificate, they list the immediate cause of death and then any secondary reasons of cause of death. For example, smoking or tobacco is not a cause of death. Heart failure would be listed as a cause of death. So if COVID is not the immediate cause of death, then it should not be listed as an immediate cause of death on there. Now, if it's a possible factor, then it can go in the second spot on the death certificate where it has other contributory factors. But as far as a death certificate, you should always put in the first spot the immediate cause of death.
Mr. Will, what traits or what education or experience that you had as a police officer, how would that affect or cause you to act as a JP?
Well, I think it just gives and enhances my ability and gives me the experience to know what police officers go through, know what the general public goes through. But for example, somebody asked earlier about signing search warrants on what criteria. Well, I know what the police are looking for, and I know what needs to be in there to make a probable cause for that. So I think that's law enforcement will enhance that for me.
That's the extent of that, you think?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Burns.
Yes, thank you. Well, I'm still in school. I'm getting my bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I'll graduate in May of this year. And criminal justice has given me a lot of experience in the wide variety of the criminal justice system. Okay, I don't have law enforcement experience, but I think I'll have the right experience to be able to look at the facts and then give a correct decision on the matter.
Let me ask you this. This was really what I had to ask you. What experience from your time with the previous Justice of the Peace, what experience there, detail some of the experience you had there with taking a new position as JP?
So this was a lot of things that I wanted to look at before I decided to run. Personally, I know Judge Schamberger. We live in the same town. We've crossed paths quite a few times because Winona is a very small town. You see each other more than once. So I think as coming in as a new Justice of the Peace, I'm sorry, I lost it. What was your question one more time?
How would your experience with Judge Schamberger,
Okay,
how would that affect, what do you take from that experience to the new position?
So professionally, with the volunteer fire department, when we go out on a wreck and there's a fatality, when Judge Schamberger comes out there, he says, Laney, come with me, okay? And so we'll go out and we'll assess the body, and he's actually let me do some of the paperwork with him to figure out what I'm going to be doing if I did get elected. And so that's helped me a lot. I've done that on numerous occasions, but also he's let me shadow him in the courtroom. I've been there for citation, ticket calls, and some real estate disputes. And so I think all the time that I've been able to spend with him, I really understand what a JP does on a daily basis, and that's going to give me the right experience.
Did he encourage you to run?
He did not encourage me to run. No, sir. I did this on my own occasion, but just knowing him, I kind of understood what I was getting myself into, so that's kind of what got me to run.
Okay, Ms. Pilcher Barnes, JP4 has historically had a high dismissal rate for traffic tickets for a very long time. So in your opinion, how is dismissing traffic tickets a deterrent to poor driving decisions that can actually harm someone else's life or take their life?
So like what I said before, traffic incidents and traffic accidents are very hazardous and could be more hazardous depending on the circumstances. And I think the fact of dismissing all of those tickets when you're driving through Winona or Red Springs or something that's in Precinct 4's district, you say, you get a ticket and you don't think much of it because you're like, oh, it may get dismissed or it's most likely going to get dismissed. Well, then that causes you to drive the same way. A ticket doesn't deter your actions for the next time because you have that mentality that it may get dismissed. So I think that I would like to change that mentality in the citizens to ensure that we all have, good driving techniques. I've been in a wreck myself, so I understand the hazard it could be. So I want to make sure that everyone's keeping everybody safe on the roads.
Mr. Wolf, what would be your policy on dismissing traffic tickets?
It's not a deterrent. We ask these police officers to go out there and enforce these laws for us. We ask them to risk their lives to go out there to write these citations to make sure people are driving safer. And then to have a judge just routinely dismiss over and over and over, obviously it's not going to create a good rapport between the JP and the police officers, but obviously I'm very pro law enforcement, and having them do their job on one end, by the time it gets to the JP courts, if it's just getting dismissed, then what good is anything that all this other stuff is done other than just waste taxpayers' money and put officers at unnecessary risk?
Thank you, Ms. Faber.
Okay, Ms. Barnes, in reading some of your background information on your website, you discussed endorsements, and you indicated you would seek endorsements from citizens, the people that elect you. Would you take endorsements from elected officials if someone steps up and wants to endorse you? I just thought that was interesting. Could you just enlighten?
So, I'm not a politician, like I said, so I don't have all the ties for other elected officials as some other people do. So I'm not going to actively seek endorsements from other elected officials just to make myself higher. I think as a justice of the peace, I need to be the correct voice of the citizens, and so I want to not necessarily seek endorsements from individuals, but I just want to seek the endorsement of the whole precinct 4. I want to be that person that they elect and that they trust. And so I may accept an endorsement from an elected official, but I'm not going to actively seek that out.
Have you received citizen endorsements? Do you have a listing on your website? You can get a chance to check that.
No, ma'am, I don't have any list of endorsements. What I mean by, I'm not seeking endorsements from individuals to list on a website to kind of make me higher. I just want to seek your endorsement and your support individually between the citizen and I, and so I know that I have your vote.
Okay, very good. And Mr. Wolf, endorsements? How are you doing in that area?
Right. So endorsements, that's just part of campaigning. That's part of what candidates get. They get endorsements from other elected officials. And yes, I do have some endorsements right now that I have not released yet, but I've been endorsed by Sheriff Larry Smith, Commissioner Kerry Nix, Representative Cole Hefner. So I have those endorsements, but that's just part of campaigning. Is you have these people who want an experienced person into office, and they will endorse you. And that goes along with me just having the relationships that I built with these other county officials throughout the years.
Thank you.
All right, I think you guys have both mentioned having voting lists and scouring through them and everything. If we were to go look at your voting history, what would we find? We'll start with Mr. Wolf.
Straight Republican. I mean, it's just that simple.
How frequent?
I know that I did miss the 2014 election, but I think that everything else has been voted in, except for this past, no, I think the 2016 was it, yeah.
Well, from a very young age, I've learned that voting is very important for all citizens, and we all have the right to vote. Some countries don't have that same right that we do. And so I would like to really make that personable in my life, that I do have that right and I need to take advantage of it. So I've only been eligible to vote since 2018 when I turned 18, so I've voted in every election since then.
If you're elected as Justice of the Peace for Place 4, Precinct 4, you're going to be confronted with a wide variety of situations, both that will test your values, your principles. So how do we as a panel, as a board, as citizens, know that you're going to follow the things that you're saying up here on the dais? So I would ask you each, starting with, I believe, Ms. Barnes, to give an example of how you were in a situation where your principles and values were tested and how you came through that.
Well, I think for me as a judge, you have to be fair and impartial no matter what. So I would definitely look at the facts of the case, and I would look back at my moral principles that my parents have instilled in me since birth, basically, to be a good Christian and to have moral decisions. And so also I would look at the facts of the case, but also double check that I'm following my moral standards as well.
So as a follow-up, I would like you to give an example of how you were tested and showed your adherence to your values and principles. Give me an example in your life.
Okay, well, I haven't been very professional in a very long time, as I've only been graduated from high school for a little bit. So I can't think off the top of my head a certain instinct or a certain situation where I have been tested, but I know that I have the correct ability and the right ability to make the right decision if that situation does occur.
Thank you. Mr. Wolf?
So as a law enforcement officer, when I was a law enforcement officer, a good friend of mine, he was also a police officer. He started doing some not so great acts, stealing evidence out of the evidence room, as far as drugs, guns. So I was the one that blew the whistle on that and contacted the Texas Ranger. Me and him worked that investigation together. My friend ended up doing, I think he got sentenced to 12 years in the penitentiary. You know, he was a friend of mine, but look, what's right is right, what's wrong is wrong.
Thank you.
Each of you, what experience or what education do you have that relates to the position that you're seeking?
Well, I graduated from Tyler Junior College with the Paralegal Studies degree, in which that's what I do now for a living. But I'm also about to graduate with my Criminal Justice degree. To be a Justice of the Peace, you necessarily don't have to have a college degree. You just have to have a high school diploma and be over the age of 18. So I think my experience as a paralegal and the criminal justice degree, because that's such a wide variety of issues that you come through during school, so I think I'll have good experience in that way because of my education.
So the education I have is more of hands-on experience through policing, through working at the law office. I am a graduate of the program that Sam Houston has. They have a LEMIT program for law enforcement supervisors. They put on it's about a 3-week program total. I am a graduate of that when I was a patrol sergeant. Other than that, I have taken, obviously, continuing education classes, and I continue to take continuing education classes to keep my peace officer's license active with the commission.
Okay, this and this is probably this will have to be the last question. And this question also pertains to evictions because, of course, evictions have been very much in the news and in the courts because of leniency related to COVID. Both parties have the right to appeal an eviction. If a tenant is unable to pay the cost of an appeal, the tenant may file a pauper's affidavit. Occasionally, filing a pauper's affidavit may be used as a delay mechanism, allowing the tenant to continue residing in the property. How familiar are you with the eviction appeal process? That's the first question. The second part of the question, what other efforts would you propose to improve the eviction appeal process? And we start with you, Mr. Wolf.
Right, so for me, owning a business with my wife, I understand that a small business owner, just like people that own property, they depend on this money to come in every month to pay for their bills. So I understand that they need money, and I need to make sure that as a JP that they are heard as quickly as possible without delay, because I understand that they're dependent on this money that these rentals are bringing in for them. So I need to have it on the docket, be heard as quickly as possible. As far as the property affidavit and the appeal of that eviction, I am not an expert on that, so I would not know for sure how that would be handled.
I do not have extensive experience in the appeal process of evictions, but I do have experience to know that sometimes tenants do have problems with paying. Sometimes, especially with COVID, they did get laid off, and so they didn't have an income to help them pay their bills. And as a real estate owner or a landlord, you rely on that kind of money because that is your job, is being a landlord. So when your tenants are getting laid off from their jobs and they can't pay you, then it puts everybody in a bad position. So I think that I would double check that we put that on the docket as soon as possible and make sure there's no delaying just for unnecessary reasons, that there is a good reason why things are delayed if it is delayed.
Okay, so now it's time for the 2-minute rebuttal, so you can either rebut something that you think your opponent said that wasn't correct, and you all have been very nice to each other, so we probably won't have much of that. Is there something that we did not bring up that you believe is important in this race, important to administering the job of the Justice of the Peace for Precinct 4, or is there anything that you didn't get to sufficiently answer that you believe that you have, you need to take your 2 minutes to explain your answer better? So we will go first with Ms. Pilcher Barnes, and then last with Mr. Wolf, of course.
Well, I am very new to this, so I may not have all the correct answers. I may not have 30 years worth of experience, and I may not have, the right experience in some people's eyes. But I do have the right experience in my eyes as being a volunteer fire department. I've been serving my community for free with no benefit other than the sole responsibility to my citizens. And I've also been a paralegal, but I think that just because I'm young and I'm a woman and I don't have 30 years worth of experience, I think I have the right experience to do this job. And I just wanted to relay that and to tell you that you don't need 30 years worth of experience. You don't need a law enforcement credentials. You just need to have the correct mindset that you want to serve your community. This is not a job for me. This is just another way for me to really serve my community, as I've been doing for the previous 6 years. I just want to be a voice for my citizens of Precinct 4, and I just want to be there for them.
So I don't really have anything to rebut, but I do want to thank Laney for stepping up and running. It's not easy to be a candidate in any race, and she has done a great job campaigning. She's been honest, and we both just run on our own merit, and I do want to thank her for that. Community service is a very big thing. The way that me and my wife give that. We oftentimes take referrals from Camp V that we do either free or on a reduced rate for veterans from Camp V that will come over and need legal services, whether it's for a civil matter or a criminal matter. Look, I was serving the community when I was a law enforcement officer. We are still serving the community now, and I think that's a very big part of any elected official is to continue to do that.
Okay. All right, now it's time for the close, and you close first.
Well, I just wanted to thank everybody once again for coming out tonight and listening to me and Mr. Wolf. This is a big deal for us as we just want to serve our community. And so this is a big deal for y'all too, because y'all get to choose. Y'all get to choose the right person you believe is fit for this job. I want you to think it's me. Just saying. Like I said, I'm a paralegal in Tyler, so I have all the experience I need for the law firm and the courtroom, okay? And I've also got the medical training. I'm EMR certified with the fire department. I've gone through trainings and continuing education trainings to get medically trained, and so I know the magistration and the inquest side of things. So I just want y'all to understand that I may not have 30 years worth of experience, but I've got the right experience for this job.
Well, I want it to be me. I mean, and I think she's making me sound a little bit older. I don't have 30 years of experience. I do have 20. But I mean, honestly, we're just out there and we're both, I think, trying to do our best to serve our community. We both bring different things to the table, and we do appreciate, or I do appreciate everybody coming out tonight and listening. You know, I look forward to try to earning your support throughout the campaign. Thank y'all again.
Okay, thank you, candidate.